Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Today we are at the Leapwing Audio Talks. I see people already are joining. Today we are blessed and thankful to have a dear friend, a legend, great guy, Mr. Al Schmitt. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Al, for taking the time because you're always been very grateful to me and to us with your time, with your knowledge. So
Uh,
I as well I want to thank you again. So
you're welcome. Thank you.
it's gonna be a fun hour. Basically, these Leapwing audio talks are 1 hour long, where you, the listeners or the audience, can ask questions to Al. It's gonna be a dynamic conversation. You have your comment box both in Facebook Live and YouTube Live, where you can post your questions, and we'll direct those questions to Al, and we'll try to answer as many questions as we can and have as much fun as we can. So I just want to, maybe I don't know who does not know Al, which I guess is no one, but I'm just gonna briefly say who's Al Schmitt. So Al, it's if correct me if I'm wrong, Al is a 23 Grammy Award engineer, 160 gold and platinum albums, one Hollywood star on the Walk of Fame, and it's, for me, I call him like a dear friend and a mentor because he's a very nice
Uh,
heart guy, which for me it's I'm very thankful to have met him. And he
thank
has worked with some of everyone's favorite artists, to Sinatra, Mancini, Ray Charles, Diana Krall, Toto, which one is my favorite albums, and countless others. So I hope everyone realizes who is
thank you. That's very kind.
anyway, after all this, I just want Al to briefly talk about how you started, when you started. I think it was in Brooklyn, New York. How did you went from being a guy in Brooklyn to being now in Los Angeles with all these accolades, awards, great life, great friends, and
Uh,
enjoying every day.
yeah. Well, as a child, my uncle had a recording studio in New York City. So
Hmm.
my dad would bring me over there sometimes on a Saturday, and we'd go to visit him. He
Hmm.
was my father's brother, but
Hmm.
he was my uncle, but also my godfather.
Yeah.
And he didn't have any children, so he treated me like I was his son, and I would go over and spend weekends with him and help set up the studio and just do the normal cleanup stuff and everything, and just watch and learn. And I got to meet so many famous people. Um, as a child, that was just an amazing thing.
Hmm.
Anyway, so yeah, and that was it went on for a while, and then I wound up on my 17th birthday.
Uh-huh.
I enlisted in the Navy, and I
Oh
was in it
wow.
for almost 3 years. And when I came out of the Navy, my uncle called me, and a friend of his had a studio,
Hmm.
and was looking for someone to be an apprentice. And he asked me if I was interested, and I said absolutely. So I went over there. I got the job, and my first day on the job, I met my mentor, who was Tom Dowd, one of the greatest engineers of all time, and we became instant friends. And he became not only my friend but my mentor, and taught me everything, all about the basics of recording, the microphones, how to use them, setups, how to set up the studio. And back in those days, we only had like 8 inputs on the board, so we could only set up 8 microphones. Anyway, he bought me a book and a little
Hmm.
notebook, and I would do diagrams of setups and what mics he used and how he used them. And that was it. And, if you get my book,
That
and I
was
was sitting
about to
on the
say.
record,
I'm
all
gonna
of that, all of that is in the book. So
I'm
Al Schmitt
gonna
on the
for the
record.
audience. I'm
And
gonna post the link to your Amazon I took from your website so people can go to your book.
yeah,
It's
it's a
called.
good idea because, that explains it more in detail and probably,
It's a great book. I totally
yeah,
recommend anyone to
yeah.
buy it. It's a pitch. I don't care. It's a great book. Read it.
Anyway, that gives you the history of how I started and what went on, and even how I came to from New York to California, and
I'm gonna interrupt you right there because I love the story when basically your one of your breakthrough sessions in New York when you were supposed to do like a happy birthday song and then like a really famous jazz cat
oh,
came into
Duke
the door.
Ellington, yeah, yeah, that was like the first thing I ever did, and that was a mistake. They booked a guy called Mercer, and we
Uh-huh.
just thought it was going to be a little demo.
Uh-huh.
So I was scheduled just to work that Saturday by myself and do these little demo records
Okay.
for people. And I did two of them earlier in the day. And then 2 o'clock, I was supposed to meet Mr. Mercer. And I was stood by the elevator, and the elevator doors opened up, and all these musicians started coming out and wanted to know where the studio was. And I said, it's right there, but why? Well, we have a session today. Mercer Ellington, Duke Ellington's son, in a big band, the Duke
Mhm.
Ellington band. And I said, oh, no, there's a mistake. I'm just not qualified to do this. Anyway, so to make a long story short, Duke Ellington showed up. I thank God I had my friend Tommy's notebook.
The note, yeah,
So
the
I
drawing.
saw a big band set up in the book, and I was able to put up the mics. Fortunately, there were only 8 mics to put up, and the music set the musicians up, and off we went. And I kept telling Duke Ellington showed up, and he was sitting next to me, and I kept saying to him, Mr. Ellington, this is a big mistake. I'm really not qualified to do this. But anyway, we got through it. We did 4 songs in like 3 hours, and yeah, all instrumentals, no vocals, but big band, and it was fun, and it just got me started. And when it was over, I thought, wow, I did this, and I never thought I would be able to, and it was,
So your
pretty
confidence started to build up.
yeah. So then I got started doing more things.
Hmm.
I started doing a lot of work with Atlantic. Tommy
Hmm.
was doing most of the work with Atlantic, but times when he didn't work with them, I did.
Hmm.
And I was doing the Clovers, Clyde McFadden, um, the Modern Jazz Quartet,
Nice.
a lot of great, interesting acts. And yeah, that was great.
And how was your move from New York to LA? How did that happen, or why did that happen?
Okay, well, that's in the book also.
Hmm.
But you know, uh, what happened was I was recording a lot of jazz records
Hmm.
with a guy by the name of Dick Bach,
Yeah.
who owned World Pacific Jazz,
Yeah.
and so I was doing Chet Baker and Jerry Mulligan, and just these great big jazz artists.
Yeah.
And finally, one day he said to me, Al, why don't you come to LA, and then I don't have to come to New York to use you, and then you'll be out there. And I said, okay, I thought we were kidding around. I said, well, give me a job out there and I'll come. So 3 weeks later, he called me on the phone and said, I got you a job out here in the best studio out here at the time in
Wow.
California. And they knew my work and they wanted me. And
And here we are.
would I come? And I said, absolutely. And so I came. I packed up my family and moved to California.
Nice. I
And
mean,
that's
mhm,
it.
nice. We already have some question from the audience. Gonna we have a question from a common friend, David Malshuber, and says, "Hey Al, looking good. What do you and what you don't like about music production in the 2000s and current times?"
What I don't like is the fact that there are so many home studios, and so many records are made where the artist and the musicians are not in the same room, and that always bothers me. When you have a drummer in Kansas City and a bass player in L.A. and a guitar player in San Francisco, it's then they're not really playing off one another at live at the time, and that's my favorite thing. I love to see how things, all the musicians, especially the rhythm
Yeah.
section, they get together, they start playing off one another. They got all the chords down and all that, but then they start improvising. And the guitar player hears the bass player do something, so he'll do something off that.
Yeah.
And it just becomes, um, it's
Something special.
more musical for me
Yeah.
than when you're doing one artist at a time.
Yeah.
We never overdubbed back in the old days. Everything was done live, and everything was done to mono and 2-track, and that was it. And
Yeah.
what you heard over the speakers was the way it was going to sound when it came out. So yeah, and so you had to learn to get balances quickly, and whether it's a big orchestra and like the Mancini things that I did, those are all live, and 40 people, 45 people at one time, and yeah, and trombones, trumpets, French horns, saxophones, percussion, rhythm section, all live. So and those were the most fun for me to do. I miss that time now. We don't get to do that as often anymore.
That is.
Now basically I just did something with um, Burt Bacharach where
Mhm.
we did a song for him, and it was just a rhythm section.
Mhm.
It was piano, bass, drums, guitar,
Mhm.
etc. And it was fun watching them play off one another and come. And this was a new song that Bert had composed,
Mhm.
and it was just a most fun day. And everybody would come in and listen and say, "Oh man, it sounds great." And they'd go back in, and we just kept making it better. And I know that Bert was very happy after. And Bert is a dear friend, and working with him is always a pleasure.
Nice. I that's that to be honest, that's one of the things that I learned from you that really is stuck with me. The fact that you love going to the studio to have fun, and I did not live through the I didn't start my career in the years where it's the normal way is to go all together. I started with, like, the drummer does something, the guitar, and I start to look back. It's like it's actually not really fun, but is how you had to do it. But looking at what you do and being in sessions with you, and it's like, man, this is fun. I want to do more things like this. So
Well, it is really fun because you don't have to use your imagination of what it might sound like. When you have one or two guys and you keep adding,
yeah,
this is all at one time, so you know what it's going to sound like. You can hear what is going on, and the musicians love that. They love playing off one another. I work with Lee Sklar a lot. I mean, they
amazing bass player.
love. Yeah, well, all of I work with all the great musicians, and that's another reason. My my records sound so good because I'm working with the best musicians in the world, and their instruments sound great. It's the drummers come in, and they have the drum tech who tunes the drums. So we just put the mics there, and a couple taps on everything, and we got a drum sound. So yeah, so when the time comes at 9 in the morning and it's downbeat, or 2 in the afternoon, or 8 at night, music happens right away.
Yeah.
Everybody's playing at one time, and you're hearing it, and it's just exciting to see something build and watch how it when it starts out and how it grows as the musicians start playing off one another more. It's very exciting, and it's so much fun. I mean, we're blessed to make money and make our living doing something we really love to do. Not a lot of people have that opportunity.
That is very true, and you can tell. I can tell because I know you, but everyone can tell how excited you get when talking about great music, having fun in the studio, being live, because it's the reason you are doing this, I'm doing this, and I think it's a bless, and I'm very thankful for all these
Yeah.
experiences. What actually, going back to what you're saying about having the great musicians and having fun in the studio, your body of work goes from jazz to rock to more singer songwriter, but I can hear in Tota 4 and Diana Krall, which are completely different records and artists, that essence of like, let's play good music in the studio, let's have fun, let's get the best musicians we can. And I'm wondering, like, why are not doing that more, because it doesn't matter, it's not that style, it's just it's a thing, it's a concept, or a way of working.
I don't know. When I was at RCA, and I'd be there at 9 in the morning. I'd have a session from 9 to 1, and it would be Ike and Tina Turner. And then from 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock, I would be doing a big band, Billy May and Billy Eckstein. And then at 8 o'clock at night, I'd be doing Henry Mancini. Then the next day, I'd be doing a country artist, Bobby Bear, in the morning, and in the afternoon I'd be doing a classical record, and then at night I'd be doing something else, a big band pop record. So I learned to do all kinds of music. It wasn't just, it was,
This is
I
one
was a
thing.
staff engineer, and whatever was there, that's what I did. So and it would change all the time. So it was never doing the same kind of music over and over and over. It wasn't all jazz. It was country. It was everything you could think of. Kind of music. Frankie Yankovic, polka music.
Yeah.
Um, so,
Jefferson
and I
Airplane.
and I didn't like polka music, but here I am with one of the big polka artists in the world, and I'm going to record him. And
Yeah.
I didn't like polka music, but I made up my mind I was going to get the greatest accordion sound that they ever heard, and that's what I worked on, getting the sounds of
Yeah.
all that and trying to get all that together. So I learned to like all kinds of music. I learned to record any kind of music you can think of. Every instrument in the world came by those studios. So I learned to record everything
Everything.
from a zither on, a
And
theremin, you name it.
that's great. And uh, how did you build the confidence, or were you always sure that any way I'm gonna get through this, I'm gonna make it happen, I'm gonna get a great sound? Or because I, a lot of people starting up, they're like shy. I was like, oh, I'm not sure. But what would you say to someone starting out to build that confidence to say, like, okay, I can do this, either it's polka or rock, let's
Yeah.
go?
Well, the confidence, I think a lot of it came from Tommy Dowd, who taught me microphone techniques.
Hmm.
We didn't have equalizers in those days. We had
Hmm.
one equalizer, and if you used it, it equalized everything. So you couldn't just put it in on a bass or a guitar or a vocal. So we never used it. And we didn't have a compressor, so we did hand compression. We learned the song down, and we learned to ride gain on the vocal and so forth. There were rotary faders back then. Yeah, and it was,
Nice.
so you build up a lot of confidence to know that you got to do 4 songs in 3 hours, and you better be on your toes, or you're going to lose a client, or the client's going to complain, or whatever. So you had to know what you were doing at all times, and had to be quick at doing it, getting balances fast and things. So I've been a lover of music all my life, and
It
from the
starts there, I guess, no?
time I was a kid. And I used to go to all the jazz clubs in New York.
Hmm.
Um, and just go around listening to music. And I was a big bebop
Yeah.
fan and
Yes.
loved that kind of music. And then when I started and I got to be recording, I started working with some of these guys that were my idols. It was like working with
Wow.
Joe DiMaggio and Babe Ruth. You know,
Yeah.
these were the idols, and I couldn't believe that the musicians walking in were who they
Like
were. My
Duke
mouth would
Ellington.
drop over. Yeah, it was like movie stars. They were to me,
Yeah.
and yeah. So, and then Tommy Dowd told me to always make friends with the musicians. Always say hello. Always talk to them. Find out, how's the family, this kind of stuff, and you get to know one another. And I'd go out and say hi. And my name's Al. I'm the engineer, and I know who you are. And if um, I'm going to try to get you sound as good as I can. If there's anything you want me to do that'll make it easier for you, let me know. And that was it. And then after a while, the musicians would start walking in and say, "Hey Al, how you doing?" I'd say, "Great, man." And I'd be out there chatting with them, and yeah, my young son went to school today,
Mhm.
first time, that kind of stuff, and it was just great. So we were very comfortable with one another, and I think the musicians all knew that I was there to do the best I could for them, and so they did the best they could for me, and it's just a mutual respect, and that was it.
Man, I this is I mean that's thanks Al for sharing that, because not everyone has had the opportunity to have a great mentor, and for you to share your experiences with up and coming engineers that might not have the chance to assist you, or you know other engineer, and these things I feel that sometimes are missed, and the fact that you create a safe space, you engage with the musicians, and more, what one of the main things I learned from you is to make everyone feel at ease and ask the musician, what do you like, what do you want me to do, do you need anything? And it's a very obvious thing to do, but it's when you're under pressure, people sometimes get too nervous and forget about they're working with other people.
Yeah.
So I
Well, one of the secrets is I always record the first take. And
okay.
then, yeah, and even if it isn't right as a take, musically,
Mhm.
I call the musicians in and I play that back so they can all hear what their instrument sounds like. And then
Mhm.
they go outside and make adjustments and make my job even easier,
Yeah.
or they may say to me, Al, I could use a little more of the hi hat and this. Great, okay, I know what to do there. So it's a mutual thing. They hear what I'm doing, and they go out and make their adjustments, and that's how we make music.
Man, and it's everyone builds up to a rated goal, which is the best music, best
Yeah.
recording, a fun session. I mean,
Well, I had such great mentors. My uncle Harry, from when I was a little kid,
Mhm.
who told me you have to treat this equipment like it's a Swiss watch, and you're a Swiss watchmaker. And if you take good care of it, it will take good care of you. So that stuck with me all the time. And I had great mentors. Um, Tommy Dowd, of course, was the one. But I love how free he was, and all my mentors, how free they were with what they what they knew, and again, there were no secrets. Nobody was didn't want. I don't want you to get better because you might take work from me. It
Yeah,
wasn't anything like that. It was just the opposite. And that's one of the reasons I wrote the book, is to just give as much info to young engineers to know
exactly.
what I went through as a kid, and working. And yeah, there you go. No, not that one.
But
That's
this
a
one
good one.
and this one,
That's the one.
this
That's a good book.
I
Uh,
have this.
yeah, yeah, great, thank you. That's now I know I sold 2 books. Anyway, so I think that's I think it's important, and I think
To
every
pass
any
information.
young engineer who reads the book, he could do it in one day. It's like 200 pages. It's not like reading the encyclopedia, and it's an easy read, and
Yeah,
there's all kinds of little things about how to deport yourself in the studio and
yeah,
little things that assistant engineers should know
yeah,
and things like that. And anyway, I hope people that have gotten it and I've gotten good responses, people liked it,
yeah.
that they've learned from it and make themselves better at what they're doing.
Exactly. I totally recommend, especially because there are things that you don't learn on YouTube or on Google. So having the chance of someone like you learn from you, I think it's a gift. And to anyone looking for mentorship, I think it's a great way to start. I have a few questions from the audience. Music
Sure.
Maker says, I would love to know, you probably seen it all over those years, but what is the one thing you look to get out of a studio or recording session?
Wow. Well, I like to get as much out of a session complete as possible. And if I'm going in with a big orchestra like Henry Mancini, I'm back then. You recorded everybody at one time, and
Yeah.
what you heard on the speakers was the way it was going to come out. There was no remixing back then. You couldn't add more bass, or
Go
you could
back or
you had to capture it all at one time. So you had to learn the song quickly and know where all the little parts were so you could bring a guitar up or bring the French horns up or bring the trumpets down in sections. So you had to learn that quickly. And, um, you know, it, that opportunity doesn't exist anymore, except maybe in some classical recordings.
yeah,
So,
scoring maybe,
you went and what?
or scoring for film maybe. I
Yeah, going right, exactly. And I don't get to do a lot of that. I've done some, and that's always a joy, to score music for films.
Great. Matt Trasher says, I just ordered those 2 books.
Okay.
So thanks for the support to that. Going back to the a bit of the mentorship you were talking, you always mention a few names that stuck with me, and I wanted always to learn more about what they did. Like one of them is Tommy LiPuma, which from what I know was one of your best friends.
Right.
How that relationship, engineer, producer, and best friends, uh, enforced your career, made you learn from him, made like you, because for example, I discovered his name with Paul McCartney's Kisses
Kisses
from the
on the
Bottom,
bottom.
which
Yeah.
amazing album. But
Yeah.
that's how I discovered Tommy LiPuma myself. I
Yeah.
was 26 at the
Oh,
time,
wow.
so
Well, he produced like Guantanamero, the big hit.
oh wow.
Uh, oh no, no, he's made some incredible records. But when I was a staff producer at RCA,
Hmm.
Tommy was a music publisher. He worked for a publishing company, and he would bring me songs for my artists. I was recording a lot of artists that didn't write their own material. Eddie
Hmm.
Fisher was one, and so he would bring me songs for that. And we instantly hit it off. We became really good friends. So we used to hang out together all the time. And then he started producing and he started doing really well. And one day he's doing this recording and his engineer, Bruce Botnick, had to leave
Hmm.
because he had already signed a commitment to start a record with the Doors,
Oh
and
wow.
and the record was almost done. It needed to be mixed and everything. And Tommy said to me, "Hey Al, you used to be a good recording engineer. Would you mix this for me?" And I said, "Oh, Tommy, I don't think I could do it anymore." And he said, "Oh yeah, it's like riding a bike." So we made a deal, and I started to mix this record. And as I was my hands on the faders and I was moving things, and I realized this is what my first love was. Not producing records, but engineering records was the thing that was most important to me. And it was a Dave Mason record, Alone Together,
Mhm.
and it just got me back into engineering. And I did for a while. I did some producing and engineering,
Mhm.
and then I got to the point where I just finally just stuck with engineering. And
Focus.
now I produce very rarely that I
Yeah.
produce anything.
I mean, that's interesting. We have another question from
Sure.
David Mashuber again. He's asking, Maureen Droney once said that engineers are always searching for a holy grail, the perfect sound in their head. Are you your worst critic as a musician? Letting go is often hard, David says.
Yeah, I am absolutely the worst. And I'll hear a record that's out there and it could have been a big hit that I did, and I'll hear it and I'll say, God, I should have done this. Or
Oh my.
why did I let that go? I'm the worst critic in the world. I don't think I've ever made a record that I'm totally 100% happy with. I
Oh
think
wow.
there's always something, if I listen really carefully, there's always something I think I could have done better. And, whether it's perfectionist or not, the most important thing is not the perfection of a record, but the feel, the emotion. People buy records because it touches them emotionally. So, it could be the perfect sounding record. Every instrument sounds perfect, but it's kind of stiff. It just doesn't have that feel or emotion in it.
Cold.
And then there can be other records that, I can't tell you how many times we'd be recording and then go back to the first take and then say, "Oh my God!" And that's it. When I did "Breezin'"
Mhm.
with George Benson, 5 of the songs were the first take. I mean, it was just unbelievable. When we would do more, we'd do 5, 6, 7 takes, and then somebody would say, "Gee, let's go back and hear that first take again." And we'd go back, and that was it. There was the emotion. There were things I could have done a little better, or things some of the musicians could have done maybe a little bit, but the feeling was there, the emotion was there, and then thank God, guys like Tommy LiPuma, that was one of the most important parts of his production techniques is getting everybody comfortable and getting the emotion there. And yeah, those were fun times.
Man, I two things from what you say. The story of George Benson and the microphone for the vocals, and like you, like, that it's. I think as well. It's in the
Yeah,
book, and it's a great
it
story.
is in the book. Yeah.
It's a great
Yeah,
one.
it is a great story. That microphone, I got that microphone from Capitol, and I
Okay.
donated to the Grammy Museum. It's in the
Oh,
Grammy
nice.
Museum. Yeah, yeah, it's pretty cool.
And um, because you mentioned that you never get like you always have something that you would like to improve, but at the same time, I admire you that you just when you know it's finished, you're done. So
Yeah,
that balance of like perfectionism, but knowing when to something is done and let go, and you're
yeah,
this is it. How do you find the balance? Because I don't know, it's such a difficult thing.
yeah. Well, sometimes we just can't seem to get it right, and we'll just walk out at night and say, "Okay, we shut everything down." We come back in the morning with fresh ears, and then we say, "Oh yeah, that's what we were missing," and then bing, it falls into place. So sometimes you get too stuck on something,
Yeah.
and the longer you work on it, the more difficult it gets actually. So it's always good sometimes to walk away. I know when I was able to smoke cigars, my assistant Steve Genowick and I, we'd be doing a mix and get stuff going and everything, and we'd get to that point where maybe it was getting not, we weren't sure where we were going, and we take a break and go out and smoke a nice Cuban cigar,
Oh, nice.
and yeah, it was just great. And then we'd come back in and after an hour of relaxing, a little lunch, and come back in, and everything would fall into place. We'd come back with fresh ears and hear the things we were zeroing in on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we were things we shouldn't have been zeroing in on, and there were other parts that for whatever it's worth, it's just a fresh air, and you come in, and when I did Unforgettable, we were
Wow.
having all kinds of problems
Really?
trying to match the vocals between her dad and her and
Yeah.
Natalie, and yeah, it was really tough. And I don't know. I went home at night. We left the mix up. I went home at night, and Dave Reitzes was my assistant at that time. And we came back the next day. I woke up in the middle of the night and figured out an echo. And when I came back in the next morning, we changed the echo. We did a little live and a little electronic blend, so it would match up with her dad, and we got it. And David Foster came in and heard it and said, "That's it, Al. Sounds great." And
Oh,
of course, it was a major
history is
hit.
made. Wow.
Yeah,
That so basically what I understand from all this is that sometimes you are too when you are looking at a piece of art, you are too stuck in like just a little piece. Just step back and get perspective. That's
yeah,
something.
absolutely.
That is something we were talking before, where when I was in Madrid last year with a dear common friend of ours, Manny Manuel Colmenero, for those who don't know,
Yes, love Manny.
he was telling me when you guys went to the Museum of El Prado how much of a passionate for art you are, and you like painting and you enjoy museums a lot, which that tells a lot about your sensitivity to any art expression. So would you
Yeah.
say that your like for other types of art expression enforces your own career, or like does that feed into each other, or not necessarily?
Yeah, I think it's, when you start out, I think it's a matter of taste, and you develop better taste buds and better
Okay.
eye buds. And my wife and I have been collectors for quite some time now, over 20 years.
Hmm.
And we have some beautiful art, but we go to, whenever we're traveling anywhere, we go to museums, and we go, and you know
Enjoy.
yeah. So yeah, some of the Spanish art, that the fishing boats coming in,
Yeah.
those are amazing pieces of work. Um,
I.
we collect mostly American art,
Mhm.
but yeah, but we love all of it. So
And
we read about art, study artists and their lives, and we've been
nice.
blessed. We've got to go. We saw some of the greatest art in the world.
Yeah, you've been in Paris as well. You've been
Yeah,
in Madrid. And
Paris. Yeah,
that's the other thing that we when sometimes we get together for breakfast or lunch. You I get a sense from you that you love traveling. Meeting new people, new colleagues, or just cultures, and I think it's an interesting aspect of everyone's life. No, that you are not just engineering. It's more to life than just work.
oh
So
wow, that's for sure. Lisa
how
and Lisa and I love animals and wildlife. We've been to Africa 3 times,
nice.
um, safaris, out there with the wildlife. And once you've done something like that, it changes your life to see how the animals live together in harmony. In most cases, the only time when somebody's hungry, they'll pick off, right, someone
Like,
old, whatever, but in general, they live together. You'll see zebras and giraffes together, and elephants and lions together. Yeah, it's just amazing. And we now we were going to go back again this year,
Hmm.
but with the pandemic we can't.
Yeah.
So we're hoping it'll be over and we can go back to Africa again next year.
Yeah.
It changed our lives to watch
Wow.
the animals, how they live in harmony, how they take care of their young. They're much like us. They
They
love their young and teach their young. Uh, yeah, it's amazing. And
we
everyone,
can.
they all have a part. Some gather and some hunt and some teach. Yeah, it's great.
I find that we can. I mean, as well as you, I think we're both animal lovers, and I find that you can learn a lot from observing animals in about respect, about love, how to take care of each other, and I think things could in this world would be better if people would like appreciate animals a bit more.
I agree. And when I see the mistreatment of dogs and pigs, and it just breaks my heart. I don't know how anyone can be cruel to another living thing. I just don't understand it.
It's great to support, and I know you foster and you adopt cats, and you have a few cats and dogs at
We
your
have three
place.
dogs and a cat, yeah, and they're well taken care of and a lot of fun.
That's
Yeah,
as well. I think what you do, and you are, I think, an example. It's is to have a balanced life. You can be
yeah,
a great successful engineer, have a good heart, be compassionate about others, be compassionate to animals, have interest in other cultures. Because to be honest, when I started, and when you're young, you have so much energy that all I wanted to do was music, 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 music. But as I grew older, I
yeah,
started to see that, okay, if I want to sustain a career as long as I'm alive, one has to, I guess, learn to pace oneself and enjoy different things. So now, as I grow older, I do more sports. I try to work less, and maybe read more, study more, travel more, and everything
yeah,
enforces my creativity, I think.
yeah. Yeah, I agree. There's an art in everything, whether it's cooking, photography, painting.
Yeah,
That's it. And all of it is just wonderful, and to learn more about how things are done, whether
yeah,
it's a great chef you're reading about or a great painter,
yeah,
and how they started, and what their trials and
yeah,
tribulations were. Um, yeah, it's important.
yeah,
And reading about these artists, and seeing how their lives were, and some of them never sold a painting while they were alive,
yeah,
and yet now you can't get near some of them. Modigliani and artists like that.
yeah,
The millions and millions of dollars.
yeah.
So
We are gonna quickly change gears for another question that is a
yeah.
more techie question. It says, what is your favorite or most versatile microphone, Al?
Oh wow, that's an easy one for me. I think if somebody said you can only have one microphone, I
Okay.
mean one type microphone,
Okay.
it would be a Neumann U67.
Okay.
I think that's my favorite microphone. I use it on trumpets. I use it on strings.
Oh wow.
You can use it on upright bass. You can use it on overheads on the drums, vocals. Some of the early Diana Krall great records, vocal records with Diana were done on a U67. Um, I think that's my favorite mic. And if somebody said you can only have one, that would be it. I mean, I love the 47 and the 48, and I
Yeah.
have M149s, and I love, some of the new mics, the Royers and the Mojaves,
Hmm.
and all of those. And there are a lot of great microphones coming out that are reasonable in price. You don't have
Yeah.
to spend $5,000 or $7,000 on a microphone
Yeah.
for people who are starting. But check out microphones and check out these companies. You know, sometimes you can get a good microphone, 300, $500.
Yeah.
You know, that'll work well.
I learned from you as well the Audio Technica mics for overheads, which I was very surprised. I really like those. I can't
Yeah,
remember
those
the
are
logo.
great. Audio Technica. Man, I'm surprised at that. Them, not surprised at them, but
Yeah.
the microphones are so good. The 5045, I think it is the ones we use on overhead
Yeah.
drums now. And we've tried it on acoustic guitar. It sounded great, and it's not overly expensive.
Yeah.
And it's just a really great mic. I've never tried it on a vocal, but maybe one day I'll give it a shot. But it's an absolutely great mic for overhead on drums and guitars and things. Yeah. So I use all different mics.
Nice. We have another recording question from Dave. Says a recording question. Any insights into distance as a mic technique tool?
Oh, distant. Well, it varies on the instrument. You know, sometimes if it's a guitar cabinet, you might want the mic up close on that. It just varies with the instrument. Same with vocals. You know, I always tell the artist to do this, and then the mic, you know, and that's how close they should be. They shouldn't get any closer than that.
Yeah.
You know, recording today is a lot different than it was earlier. Years ago, people like Rosemary Clooney and Bing Crosby and Frank Sinatra and some of the great singers, they all had microphone technique. They all leaned in on the low notes and they backed off on the high notes and they lifted their head a little bit when there's a peak coming, you know, so they didn't get a pop. That's a lost art today. No one does that. Now they get right on the mic and that's it. They sing the soft parts there, they sing the loud parts there, and it's up to the engineer. And that's why there's so much compression being used on vocals.
How do you? Oh, sorry if I interrupt.
No, you did.
How do they learn this art form, or was that something that the engineer will teach the singer, or they were like how did that happen?
No, I don't think it was anything teaching the singer. I think it was just something
Common
that
sense.
grew out of when they were recording years ago when they started. You know, they would do an orchestra and a vocal with just one microphone.
Yeah.
So you had a, you know, they would listen and then they would move people around, you know, and then the singer would get to his spot, and that was it. And everybody learned. So if you lost a word or two, you'd had to do another take, and it was getting expensive because you're recording on acetates and
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And so I think they learned through
It's trial and error,
osmosis.
I guess.
Yeah, trial and error and osmosis on how to do it and what makes them sound best. I know I recorded only one time. I recorded with Bing Crosby when I was at RCA, but I remember he was singing and he would do the song, and then there was a break, and just a mental break, and he just turned his head, and he had the racing form with him, the horse racing form, and he was looking at the racing form, and then it was his time to come in. He would just turn his head and start to sing. I mean, it was just like unbelievable. I mean, he was such a professional. You know, it was unbelievable. Yeah, and how relaxed he was, and how well he knew the song he was singing, and you know, it was great. He was so well prepared.
That is, I think, being ready means a lot of hours of practice, and I myself at this time and age, myself playing guitar, it took me a lot of hours to learn how to play guitar, and I have the feeling that my generation is very anxious to get everything now, and that's why I think a lot of people don't even have the patience to get an instrument, because we live in such a right now society, but everything takes time to be good. Like
Absolutely, you don't become a really good engineer overnight. You know, you learn, and you know the great thing about places like Capitol and the Village and those places,
yeah.
great engineers come in from all over the world. And so if you're an assistant there, you can learn from all these guys what their setups are and what microphones they use. And, I would tell young assistants, get a notebook and copy down setups, microphones, and especially on things that you like, and you learn a little from this engineer and a little bit from this guy, and whether it's Glyn Johns, or whoever, you learn from these guys, Nico Bolas, George Massenberg. There's so many great engineers, and you learn from them, and you maybe take a little bit of this technique from him and a little of this from someone else, and you blend it in with what you're doing and what and you become your own little guy, and you have your own little technique on how to record. Nick, so
great advice.
It takes, you have to listen, and and if you have a question, just make sure that when you ask it, it's at a time when you're not bothering anybody. You got a question and they're in the middle of something, write it down. And then when it's over, say, hey, I saw you do this. Why did you do that? And, 90%, 99% of good engineers will say, oh, yeah, I did that because of this. And so now you learn something. And if you go in the studio, if you don't learn something every day when you go in the studio, there's something wrong. I mean it. I learned something still today when I go in. I find little different techniques and things, how to record, different mic techniques on the piano, and I listen to piano and bass records at home, and try to figure out how they got certain sounds. And if it's an engineer that did it and I know him, I'll call him on the phone and say, man, I love the piano sound you got on that record. How did you do that? What mics did you use? Where did you? And they'll tell me. I mean, we don't have any secrets. Yeah, and we shouldn't. I mean, we should be mentors to everybody.
That's such a amazing mindset. We have so we have about 10 minutes left, and we're gonna get some questions for Al.
Sure. Yeah.
The first one here from Electric Al says, question for Al. I thought I heard you mention that you prefer inline XLR mic pads and built-in mic pads over preamp pads. Can you elaborate?
Wow. No, not really. Preamp pads. I have my own preamps, a big rack of preamps. Capital has great preamps. So, I try to match a certain preamp with a certain instrument.
Yeah.
I have my Studer valve preamps that I use usually on the bass, and sometimes on the piano. So yeah, it's you learn preamps and learn the ones you like and the ones that sound good. There are certain preamps that are harsh. For vocal preamp, there's a Martech that I've been using.
The one that is like a rectangular, no?
It looks like a
toolbox, small toolbox.
Yeah, right. It looks like a power supply for a tube mic. It's amazing. I don't know if they still make them, but I have one and I just love it. I've stopped using it. I mean, I still use it at times, but I stopped using it all the time because one of the engineers at Capitol made me a special vocal preamp.
Nice.
I only made 2 of them, and he did it all by hand, and it is the best vocal preamp I've ever heard. So, that's my go-to preamp now. But there are times when it doesn't work right on a certain vocal, and we'll go back to the Martech, and then it's a little different sound. And so, yeah, learn your preamps, learn the preamps you like, and, when you can afford to buy some, save your money and buy gear, buy microphones, buy preamps. These are tools I mean, if you were a carpenter, you'd want a good hammer and you'd want a good saw and you'd want all these great tools. So it's the same thing in the music business. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
these are our tools.
When I've been in the studio with you, I love how you have a few selected pieces, not like tons of rack, but everything has a reason and everything has its place. It might to the like observer, it might look simple, but it has such a decision making process behind it. Like, I want this for that, I want that for this. It's it's
Well,
great. It's great to learn from it.
well, you know what? It takes. I mean, you get years of experience in the
Exactly.
studio, and
Condensing.
you learn every day. And as I said before, if you don't learn something every day in the studio,
Yeah.
you know, my good dear friend Ed Cherney, who's passed away,
It's hard.
you know, we talked about that a lot, about how important it was to learn and educate. And we try to do that. You know, I've worked with a lot of great assistants who now have gone on to become really good engineers
Yeah.
and great engineers in some
Yeah.
cases. So I'm proud of those people.
For anyone that doesn't know as well, Al is with Ed. I think you guys were founders of the Meta Alliance, right?
Yes, we're still in there with the Meta Alliance. We just brought Nico Bolas in, so he's part of the group now, and it's all about teaching, and it's all about learning about new gear and what gear is good and whether we give it our approval or not. And
Yeah.
it's like the good seal house of approval, the good house seal of approval, you know, on things. Well, that's what we do for microphones and preamps and things. We all listen down and make sure that it meets, you know, our qualifications.
Yeah. I put the link of the Meta Alliance on the chat box for anyone that wants to check it out.
Yeah.
And okay, so just a few last questions. Says Dave, another question. Anybody ever request that the session be recorded mixed to tape in this day and age?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, wow.
Not too long ago, when I was doing Bob Dylan, the first, I think the first two albums I did with Bob were all on tape. We had to convince him after, you know, we used 50 rolls of tape. Yeah, pretty expensive. And we showed him the difference between tape and Pro Tools, and that was it. Yeah, once we got above 96, I do everything at 192 when
Mhm,
I can, and
mhm.
but certainly nothing below 96.
Yeah,
And yeah, it's
nice.
it's
It's
yeah,
fun.
you can really tell. If we there's a little story with Diana Krall. They wanted to record on tape, and we were all her records being done on tape.
Mhm.
And Steve Jenowick, we were trying to convince him to go to 96 on in Pro Tools,
Mhm.
and they didn't want Pro. They nah. So what happened was Steve set it up so we recorded in Pro Tools and at tape, and he was able to lock them up.
Oh,
And when
wow.
they came in to listen back, while they were listening, he kept switching back and forth, and nobody noticed it. So when we told them that, then they realized, hey, wait a minute, you know, that this is a much easier way. And, you know, we did three takes, and Diana loved the third take, but she loved the piano solo in the
Uh-huh.
second take. And we were able to just do it in two
Yeah,
seconds.
right.
Just drop that in, take the other one out. And we, you know, if we had to do that on tape, we would have had to edit the tape. It would have taken a half an hour,
Yeah.
and that was a half hour time that would have been wasted in the studio. And this
Yeah.
way we were able to make that edit, show that it worked, and then go right into the next tune.
Which I guess goes back to at the end, what is important is the sound, the performance, the feel, and if that's right.
Yeah, you got to capture the emotion. And that's why I always say record the first take. You know,
Yeah.
no matter what you think, just record it. You never know what's going to happen. And, I can't tell you how many times I've been listening back to take 12 or take 13, and we go back to the first take, and that's it. We look at one another and say,
That,
yeah, absolutely.
that's amazing.
Sorry about the grubbiness, guys, but
you look,
now,
actually,
yeah.
someone is saying that Amy and Al look the same age. So I don't know if it's a compliment for you or like. So you look great, Al.
Oh, thanks.
You look great, man. So we are almost over an hour.
Okay.
I just quickly want to just mention that as well. Al and Leapwing and us, we are working on something special for you guys, and we are very, as Leapwing, me as Emmy in a personal space, I'm very proud and humble and thankful to be able to get Al's trust in doing something as a plugin together. So I just want to Al to say thanks.
Well, thank you. I hope
it's gonna be fun.
Some information out of this, and you all learned something.
Exactly. We will disclose more as we go. For now, we just can't. But it's gonna be, at least we're gonna have fun doing it. And as well, from all the audience here and from Leapwing and myself, I wanted to thank you for sharing your experience, Al, because it's a gift to all of us in the music and in the recording that we get to learn from you.
Well, thank you.
So I really,
it's my pleasure to be here, and I enjoy this, and I'm happy I can tell stories. When Phil Ramone and I work together all the time, after a session, we'd spend 2 hours, and everybody would be in the control room telling stories, and it was just one of the most fun parts of the day, the way to wind down, and yeah, it's great. Anyway, thank you, everybody.
And people, thank you, Al. And this talk is gonna be on YouTube and Facebook for people to watch it later. But Al, again, thanks for your time. Have a great day. I hope to see you soon in person and give you a big hug in person soon.
Yeah, I can't wait. I'm a hugger, and I can't wait.
I'm a hugger too. So okay,
yeah,
guys,
right, listen, love you
thank
guys.
you very much.
Right,
Take
bye-bye.
care.